up to chapter 39, verse 6, as it states. So, no, actually, we're going to go back to verse 5, or verse 5. So, from the moment Joseph was deposited in Potiphar's house, and everything that belonged to him, and God blessed the house of the Egyptians on account of Joseph. And there was a blessing for Joseph in his whole house and in his field. And he left Joseph in charge of everything. And he did not know anything. The only thing he knew about was the only thing that he left for himself was the bread that he ate. Joseph was very good looking. So what does this mean? Joseph, he did not know anything that was with him. He did not concern himself with anything, except for the bread. Rashi says that the bread here doesn't mean the bread. It means his wife. He ishto. Meaning to say he kept back for himself the bread. That was a reference to his wife. So, what?
I didn't see them.
Well, because I'll tell you how. Because it's a reference to like eating. Eating in the Talmud is a reference to can be a connotation, a euphemism. So that's what they're suggesting. And lechem doesn't mean bread in the Bible. It means nourishment. So, and also from the context of the story, kind of implies that Joseph tells Potiphar's wife in verse 9, he has not held anything back from me except for you, which means to say that when he says the only thing he held back was the food, it means it was a reference to Potiphar's wife. So that's kind of like the scriptural source. Okay, and Joseph was Yefei Toar. Joseph was very good looking. So Rashi says Joseph got carried away with himself. Even Moshe, once Joseph saw himself in he's the manager of the house, he began to eat and drink. He began to play with his hair. God said, your father is mourning, and you're playing with your hair. I'll provoke the bear against you. Potiphar's wife is compared to a bear because a bear is an animal that has no shame. Miyad vatisa eshes adonav. Immediately she picked up her eyes. So basically, by the way, I wanted to say that this is something very powerful. While your father is mourning for you, okay, you can't get back to him, but you should at least be in mourning. This is a reference to like today, the Jewish people. Okay, there's very little we can do. We should still be acknowledging the fact that we're in mourning. That's something that moves me. Anyway, so verse 7. Was after these matters. She lifted up her eyes to Joseph, Tomer, and she said, "Shechvayimi, sleep with me." Now the next word is Vayima'ain. Now you know the word Vayima'ain, he refused. Here too, this is one of the 4 times in the Bible where we have this trop called the Shalshelas. The Shalshelas is Pazer is the longest known in the Bible. It has 9 levels, 6 up, 3 down. And the Shalshelas is the Pazer times 3. So it's by far the longest known in the Bible. And it shows his struggle. He was struggling greatly with whether or not he was going to sin. The Talmud actually says, Rashi's going to say this too, Rashi, the Talmud tells us that he actually intended to sleep with her, and in fact, he had his seed came out through his fingernails. Yeah, that's very graphic. I'm not even sure exactly what it means. That's what the Talmud says, and he was intending to sin with her, but he was stopped. We'll get to this Rashi in a little bit by seeing her image, his father's image in his eyes. So that's held back by the fact Vayima'ain, Joseph refused. He was very much tempted. Vayomer al Eshes Adonav, and he says to the wife of his master, Hein Adoni lo yada iti ma babayit, v'kol asher yesh lo natan biyadi. My master doesn't know anything that's with me in my house, and everything that he has, he placed in my hand. Einenu gadol babayit hazeh mimeni. There's nobody greater in this house than me. V'lo chasach mimenu me'uma. He's not hold back anything from me. Kimo tach ad pasher atishto. Except for you, you're his wife. How can I do this terrible thing and I'll sin against God? Rashi says, because she was a Noahide, children, they're commanded about sexual immorality. By the way, the word chasach, you know where else? I just noticed that today because I wrote this morning when I did when I wrote the Torah I'm writing. I wrote this word. Actually thought of Seth because the first time I wrote this passage, I wrote it with Seth. So this is from the Akedah. No, God says, and you did not withhold your firstborn son from many. What? Yeah, in that's what I wrote this morning. The Akedah. I just want to go here, look at it. It's in chapter 20, I believe, chapter 22. It says, I know that you're God-fearing. And then it says, you didn't hold your firstborn son from me. And here Joseph says, didn't withhold from me. So it's the same expression. And it was when she spoke to Joseph, Yom Yom, every day, he didn't listen to her. To lie with her, to be with her. Rashi says, I feel below tashmish. Even without relations, she said, just let's lie down together. She says, just lie down next to me. Liosima. And she said she wanted him to be with her in the world to come. Meaning to say, Rashi's saying that if he would have been with her, he would have lost his share in the world to come. They're strongly discouraging that. It was on that day. Hold on. Oh. And he came to the house to do his work. And there was no man from the people of the household to do their work there. Komar, meaning to say, was that special day. Is that special day. Yom Tzachok, a day of frivolity. Yom Eid Shalem, it was the day of their festival. Everybody went to the temple. Amra, she said, Ein Yom Hagun. I have no day as fitting as this, Lizakek Yosef, to be with Joseph Kayom Hazeh, like today. Amra, she said to them, Cholani, I'm sick. She claimed she was sick and couldn't go. So it was a specific day she had plotted, a day of festival. So he came to the house to do his work. And this is the Rashi I was referring to before. Why did he come to do his work? Ravu Shmuel. This is a dispute in the Talmud. Chad Amar, one rabbi said, Melachto Mamash. He came to do his actual job. He came home to do his work. The other approach is Lasot Tzrachav Ima. He came home. He had in mind to sin with her. Ella, why didn't he sin? Shenirao Demut Diukno Shel Aviv. He saw the image of his father in the window. And the image of his father helped him refrain from sinning. And I'll read for you what the Rashi says. Quoting the quote, Rashi says, as appears in Tractate Sota. And this is the quotation. When she caught hold of him by his garment, the image of his father came in the window, and he said to him, Joseph, your brothers are destined to be inscribed upon the stones of the Kohen Gadol's garments, and you are among them. Do you want your name to be erased from among them and be called the one who goes to harlots? Ironically, Judah had gone to a harlot, or he thought was a harlot, but she wasn't a harlot. He said, this is your destiny. Do you want to be part of greatness, or do you want to be with this momentary moments of pleasure? Vayikirota. So, she grabbed a hold of his garment. More saying, Shechva, sleep with me. Vayazov bigdo biyada. And he abandoned his garment in her hand. Vayanas vayetze achutza. And he ran away. He went outside and he ran away. When she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, Vayanas achutza. He ran outside. She called to the men of her home, to the people there. He brought to us okay, so I forgot who was asking me, where's the first time it says the Jewish people? We were having that discussion. The Jewish people were never called Yehudim. She calls him here an Ish Ivri. What does Ivri mean? So we'll see what Rashi says. But look, they brought me a Ivri man. They translated here as a Hebrew man, but that implies that there was a Hebrew language back then. Why would we assume that there was a Hebrew language back then? Who were they speaking to? If they're speaking Hebrew, who would they have been speaking to? To make sport, to laugh at us. Me. He came to sleep with me. So she blames him. Rashi says, Ivri, who is this? Me'aver anar, mi b'nei aver. So Rashi says there are, Rashi gives two reasons why they're called the Hebrews, or the Ivri, which today means Ivrit, Hebrew. One is that they came from the other side of the river, the Aver anar. The other explanation is mi b'nei aver, from the sons of Aver. So, what? So this word appears as what? Meaning what? One of the invasions that we put into Quran is recorded. Yeah, so the Egyptians, so there's record of the Ivri. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. Says the Egyptians regarded the Hebrews as repulsive. So that's why she says, what's his source for that? But maybe it says later on, like when he brings his brothers, it says they lived separately. But I saw from Rabbi Soloveitchik, they're saying, what does Rashi say Ivri means? It means from the other side of the river, from across the river. Why is that the name of a Jew? Avram is called the Ivri. Joseph is called an Ivri. Jonah, when they ask who he is, nobody's called Jewish. Nobody's called a Yehudi in the Bible or in the Talmud. Except in the book of Maccabees, somebody's referred to as Yehudi because he's from the place of Judea. Why are the Jews called the Ivris? So Rabbi Soloveitchik said, because the Jews are always apart. Means the other side. The Jew is never fully integrated into society. The Jew can assimilate all he wants, but he's always apart. That's what he's saying. This guy, Joseph, thought he had assimilated. He thought he was in charge of the whole house. He thought he's running everything. He's the man in the house. She says, "No, I know who you are. You're an Ivri. You're not one of us." That's what it is. That's what it is. The Jew is not one of us. That's what she was saying. This is unfortunately foreshadowing a lot of our history. That the Jews think that we've assimilated. We think we're part of everyone, but the nations of the world always see us as a part.
Also refers to chapter 43, verse 32.
Yeah, that's the brothers. They come. That's the brothers when they come before him, and he says,
Joseph can't eat with the other Egyptians.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's another reference. That Joseph has to eat separately because he was an Ivri. So maybe it's a little bit like the caste society. There's a man. I know a friend of mine. He's Indian. In his land, he's a Brahmin. You know what Brahmins are? They can't touch them. They can't touch them. They can't eat with them. But here, he's just a clerk in the store like everybody else. I mean, not just a clerk, but he's a clerk. I mean, he's like everybody else. There, he's a Brahmin. He was a slave, but he thought he wasn't. That's the point. He thought he was hot stuff, but she looks at him and says, "This man's an Ivri." You're right. You have to read it as a derogatory slur. And when he heard that I lifted up my voice, and when he heard that I lifted up my voice and I called out, he left his garment with me. He ran away. Okay. Verse 16. So he kept his garment with her. She kept his garment with her. So until Joseph's master came to his home. And she spoke these words to him, saying, "This Hebrew slave has come to me, and you brought to me to make sport against me. When I lifted up my voice and I called out, he left his garment with me, and he ran away." Rashi says, this Hebrew slave that you brought to us. By the way, you can also see, unfortunately, this is the charge that Sarah makes about Yishmael, whose mother was an Egyptian. She says that she saw Yishmael was being mitzachek with Yitzchak. That's also from the Torah reading of Rosh Hashanah. And she sent him away. So it's kind of like measure for measure. Here, Joseph is accused of being mitzachek by an Egyptian woman. Hello, Desmond. Ooh. So then, what does the verse say? So the verse says, we'll do one more verse, then we'll stop. Okay. And when his master heard the words of his wife, that she spoke to him saying like these words, and he was very upset. Rashi is very graphic here. When did he say this to her? B'shas tashmis. He said it to her during marital relations. Amr Lokain, she said this to him. That's meant when she said, these words your servant did to me. In Yanei Tashmish Ka'ila. He did these exact things. The very why does Rashi have to be so graphic here?
There's another interesting story on this.
Yeah.
Where he says, line 34 was incensed Steinzeit says it doesn't state who he's in sense with. It's not clear if it's with Joseph or his wife. And then Ezra says, what's it going to be? It's going to be Joseph's version of his first version.
Well, probably he probably right, but it's a very good point.
Put his wife in jail. He also didn't execute Joseph.
And also, he couldn't put his wife in jail because then it would be that he would be the embarrassed one. Yeah. So okay, there's a lot of beautiful things. Let us dive in mincha now.